Aeldari. 3 numbers, 3 pools, and they don't line up. This week, 41 lists at 47.1%. Since the edition launched, 45.5, below the even line. And a week or so back, this show's own meta report had that week at 46.8, an 8-point drop I flagged as noise the day it aired. Whether it's the Aeldari climbing back or just the churn you get on 41 lists, I can't tell you from here. Inside that number, one build won a grand tournament without dropping a game. 45.5% since the edition launched, below the even line. The spread underneath isn't all bad. 71 lists finished with a winning record, 4 made a podium, and 1 won its event outright, which we'll spend a good chunk of this episode on. The week on its own is 47.1, a shade above the edition number. Roughly 4 in 10 lists on the whole board this week came out of the World Team Championship singles, so it's leaning hard on one very specific field. The names and the scores you're about to hear all come from BCP, and anything that ran on another app is invisible to me here. 5 builds have a real enough sample to talk about, several of them 2 detachments run together. The best record is Path of the Outcast with Seer Council, 20 lists at 54%, and it's the build that won the event. The other 4 sit behind it on the board, down to Serpent's Brood near 33 at the bottom. Popularity pulls a different way from performance. The most brought build is Aspect Host at 41.1, well back of the top 3 since launch. It fills the whole detachment budget alone, so every one of its 33 lists declared Disruption, the only disposition it grants. The weekly picture flips that. This week, that same Aspect Host is the best number on the board, 57.2, and it did that on 5 lists. So the faction's most played build sits well behind across the edition and on top across a single weekend. And 5 lists can't tell you which is real. Path of the Outcast plus Seer Council is the best performing pairing, and it's the build that won the event. 2 detachments stacked together, each costing detachment points out of a fixed budget. Path of the Outcast is 1 point, Seer Council 2, which is 3, exactly what a normal-sized game gives you, so they fit with nothing to spare. Path of the Outcast carries far-reaching doom. While your Rangers or Shroud Runners are shooting, enemy units gain 6 inches of detection range. Seer Council carries Strands of Fate, a pool of fate dice at the start of the battle, 3, 6, or 9, depending on the size of the game, spent to knock a command point off certain stratagems when the die matches. A 2 detachment list still declares 1 force disposition, and it's whatever the player wrote down on their export. The champion declared priority assets, the Seer Council side. Another player took the exact same 2 detachments to the same event and wrote down something different. 17 lists across the edition played at least 4 games and won 3/4 of them, and 3 units set that group apart from the other 171. The Warlock Conclave shows up in 11 of the 17 against 40% of the rest. Lhykhis is at nearly the same gap, and the Warp Spiders, the unit this episode keeps coming back to, are in 13 of the 17, a 22-point gap over everyone else. None of those is the unit most lists run. Rangers are the faction's most brought, 125 of the 188 lists, about 2 in 3. 60 points for a cheap scoring body on a backfield objective, and they show up only 4.5 points more often in the strong lists than the weak ones. 17 lists is a small pile, so read it as an early signal. The most common leader pairing in the faction is Lhykhis going into a unit of Warp Spiders, 64 of the 188 lists since the edition launched, well clear of anything else. The Warp Spiders have an ability called Flicker Jump. In your movement phase, the unit can turn its move into a 24-inch jump, but the printed rule says that if it does, it cannot charge that turn. Lhykhis undoes exactly that. The Lhykhis datasheet carries an ability called Empiric Ambush, and while Lhykhis is leading a unit, that unit is eligible to declare a charge in a turn it used its Flicker Jump. The 2 together make the long jump across the board and charge in anyway, which is how they drop onto an objective late and take it off you. The July update moved the unit both ways. A squad of Warp Spiders came down from 115 points to 105, and the tax for a second and third squad went up from 15 to 20. The squads lean into that charge too. 91 of the Corpus's 156 spider squads arm the Exarch with power blades, the melee fit. 52 shoot instead with the spinneret rifle, and 13 stay stock. The next attachments by count are Jane Czar into Howling Banshees and Fuegan into Fire Dragons, aspect leaders going into their own aspect, the pattern across the army. When you drill leader attachments in Wardrill, the Lhykhis pairing is one of the exact questions the app asks. Of every matchup with 100 games or more behind it, exactly one comes out a win. Chaos Space Marines at 51.4. Everything else at that sample size is underwater, and the slide has the full board. The two worst are Necrons and Custodies, 35.6 and 34.7. One more lane on a smaller sample goes straight to Tuesday's episode. Against the Thousand Suns, the Aeldari are at 27.8 over 72 games. Their dossier calls that same lane 72.2, the identical game from the other side of the table. A couple of smaller lanes look kinder, Astra Militarum and World Eaters both above 50, but those are 70-odd games each, so I won't lean on them. Same engine as the app's heat map runs these next 3 duels, 1 round of fighting, the numbers averages of fixed seed dice math. I built them from Matt Schuchman's actual champion list and the opponents it actually beat, and every ranged 1 assumes the target's in cover, because these units realistically are. His Fire Dragons with Fuegan attached into a Telemon Dreadnought out of the Custodies list they beat do 16.4 damage through cover and wipe it 86 times in 100. That's the Aeldari Alpha Strike as designed, a whole unit deleted in 1 activation. Point a Tau Twin Lance from another opponent's list back at those same Warp Spiders, and it clears all 5 in a single round of shooting, even in cover, 100% in this run. Custodian Wardens with Valerian into the 10 Fire Dragons finish the same way in melee, and the dragons are gone. The engine builds each defender as a bare datasheet, so a wiped Warp Spider unit is the 5 bodies, not Lhykhis attached to them, and none of these include fate dice, stratagems, or an invulnerable save bought from one. Read the kill figures as the bodyguard's loss and a rough floor on what they can take. Strands of Fate anchors the left side of this card. 6 stratagems down the middle, 4 enhancements on the right. The rule hands you a pool of fate dice at the start of the game, bigger for bigger battles. 6 of them at a standard 2,000 point size. Every stratagem on this card costs 1 command point, and each one is pinned to a value on the dice. Roll that value and you can spend the die instead, and the stratagem goes off free. The Torque of Morai Heg is the priciest of the 4 enhancements, 20 points, and it's the one the list ahead carries. Seer Council grants access to priority assets. This Wardrill list declares it, and so did the champion. This one gets a list too, the Aeldari build, and I'm calling it Jump Scare. It comes to 2,000 on the nose. Whoever's holding the models decides more of this than the list does. It runs Path of the Outcast with Seer Council declaring priority assets because that pairing has the best record in the faction and it's the one that won the grand tournament. This pairing is the one the rest of the episode already leaned on. Lhykhis leads a unit of Warp Spiders, the Autarch Wayleaper leads a second, and the database prices each squad at 105. Stacking a third is where the tax kicks in, so the build stops there. Fire Dragons under Fuegan are the anti-tank answer, the same pairing that put 16.4 damage into the Telemon Dreadnought in this episode's Calc corner, and wiped it 86 times in 100. Dark Reapers add range pressure under Mogin Ra. The Avatar of Cain is the counterpunch through the middle. Priority Assets deals you 1 of 5 printed missions, and which one you get depends on what the other player declared. Against a disruption list, it's Extract Relic, where a Ranger or the Wayleaper Spiders sweep the center once the dragons or the Avatar have cleared whatever was guarding it. Against a reconnaissance list, it's Vanguard Operation. Get 1 unit into a terrain area inside the opponent's territory, and it completes at the end of your turn if no enemy unit is left in that terrain area. Deep strike the Wayleaper's unit in, or flicker jump Lhykhis' squad into position to make that happen. The jobs stay the same whichever mission lands. Rangers and Skyrunners run the actions, while the Storm Guardians hold down a sticky objective for the rest of the game. The Dragons and the Avatar do the killing. A Spider unit provides the late objective flip. This is the Glass Army, so you expose 1 piece at a time and never offer the Dragons or the Spiders before they've scored. 2 swaps if the models aren't in your case. Without Lhykhis, a squad of striking scorpions and an extra ranger unit fill her 135 to the point. Without the Avatar, a Wraithblade brick and a second Storm Guardian unit cover the whole 250. The Exodites finally have models. They're the Aeldari who left the dying empire and settled wild frontier worlds, and their nobles ride to war on big lizard mounts called Drake steeds. Games Workshop revealed them at the summer preview in June. The Kill Team box opened for pre-order on the 25th of July. Tournament lists carrying the new units first showed up on the 8th of August. The kit builds into 4 40k datasheets, the Dragon Knight squad and 3 characters, and the rules and points live in the app and on the community downloads page. Games Workshop says standalone releases are coming later, without naming a date or a book. The Dragon Knights are the box's squad, Drake Steed riding clan warriors. They start at 3 riders for 90 points. A full 6 costs double. The Laser Lance has a ranged profile and a melee profile. It fires 1 shot at range and makes 3 swings in melee. After a charge, Lance adds 1 to the wound roll. On the Hunt lets them fall back and still shoot and charge that turn. 2 characters can ride with the squad. The Clan Blade is a 70-point leader. It gives the unit sustained hits in melee, an extra hit on each unmodified 6. The Stone Singer, a 60-point support psyker, stacks alongside the Clan Blade, and running both is legal. The Ley Stalker fights alone, an 80-point sniper whose long rifle picks out enemy characters. After it shoots, 1 non-monster, non-vehicle unit it hit takes a battle shock roll at -1. 9 days of tournament data is all there is, so read these as early counts. Since the box went on sale, 13 of 137 Aeldari lists brought Dragon Knights. Their combined record leans losing so far, 22 wins against 27. One of them went 3-0. It placed second at its event. None of the 4 sheets prints an invulnerable save, which is why some players say run the squad bare and skip the character tax. 5 of the 13 paid for the Clan Blade. The Stone Singer showed up in 6. Watch whether the bear squads start outscoring the loaded ones over the coming weekends. Matt Schuchman won the whole thing, 5-0 and first, at the Summer of War Grand Tournament, on Path of the Outcast plus Seer Council, and he declared priority assets, confirmed on his own list export. 2,000 points, Lhykhis leading 1 of 2 Warp Spiders units, Fuegan with Fire Dragons, Mogin Ra with Dark Reapers, Jane Zar with the Howling Banshees, the Aspect Toolbox, 1 specialist unit for every job. 5-0, and only one of the 5 was close. 97-86 to open, 85-82 over Custodes list, 94-63 against Leagues of Votan, 100-53 against Tau, 98-88 over Sororitas to finish. 1 game decided by 3 points, the other 4 more comfortable. He was on priority assets the whole way. Round 2 ran priority assets into a take-and-hold opponent, a coin flip across more than 4,000 games in the Matrix. Round 4, priority assets into a Purge the Foe list, another wash in the data. 2 of his 5 opponents were also on priority assets, a straight disposition mirror. The Matrix gave him no disposition edge. His tightest win left him 3 points ahead, and he still finished 5-0. Thomas Faulkner had the strongest run at the biggest event of the week. 5-1 across the 6 Swiss rounds are data tracks, 20th at the World Team Championship Warmaster singles out of 571 lists in our data. This is a different Aeldari entirely. Armored Warhost plus Spirit Conclave, built on Wraith constructs, 3 Wraith Lords, 2 units of Wraith Guard, 2 of Wraith Blades, a pair of Fire Prisms over the top. Both Wraithguard units carry D-sides, the pick 33 of the Corpus's 42 Wraithguard squads make. The scythe floods auto-hitting shots, where the Wraith Cannon is 1 huge shot that has to roll. He declared Reconnaissance, again confirmed on his own export. The 1 event win in the whole edition pool is Schuchman's, so I won't oversell a 5-1, but 20th of 571 at the largest single field in the data is the strongest run the faction has that didn't win. 5-1 across those 6 Swiss rounds, 92-82 over Genestealer Cults, 95-72 over Demons, then the 1 loss, 73-98 in a round whose opponent we couldn't resolve. He closed strong, 93 to 88 over another Aeldari list, 74 to 57 over demons again, and 100 to 68 to finish. He was on reconnaissance throughout. Round 1 put reconnaissance into a priority assets opponent, leaning his way by a whisker over a couple of thousand games. Not enough to call an edge. Round 4, into a disruption list. The same picture. None of it adds up to a disposition edge. 2 of the 6 opponents we couldn't confirm a disposition for. A Wraith list grinding out 5 wins at the deepest field of the week. Russell Watts took the same 2 detachments to the same event and went 2 and 3. Path of the Outcast plus Seer Council the same weekend as Schuchman at the Summer of War Grand Tournament. He built his around the Avatar of Cain and 3 Wraith Lords with a single Warp Spider unit rather than Schuchman's Aspect Toolbox, and he declared reconnaissance where Schuchman declared priority assets, both confirmed from their exports. Same combo, same weekend, opposite ends of the table. 2 and 3, and the run is the story. He opened with a win, 84 to 81 over Astra Militarum, then lost 3, 50 to 100 against Sororitas, 79 to 86 against Custodes, and 90 to 95 against another Aeldari list, that last a 5-point game. His 5th game's pairing didn't resolve, so it's left out. 2 of the players who beat Watts, the Sororitas player Jeffrey Kolodner and the Custodes player Gaurav Tanwar, both then lost to Schuchman at the same event. Kolodner beat Watts 100 to 50 and lost to Schuchman 98 to 88. Tanwar beat Watts 86 to 79 and lost to Schuchman 85 to 82. Same faction, same 2 detachments, same opponents, opposite results. The builds were different too, and it's 1 list against 1 list, so the declaration is 1 difference among several. They're side by side to look at. I didn't see any of these games played. The scores and the 2 lists are what I have, and this is a reasoned read of how they went. Schuchman was on priority assets. Twice, against opponents also on priority assets, the mission was Sabotage. Score for a unit that plants Sabotage near an objective, more if that objective sits in the opponent's territory. Into a Take and Hold opponent, it was Secure Asset. Score for securing objectives with an action, with a bonus for holding 3 or more. Into Purge the Foe, it was Vital Link. Score for holding central objectives and the markers placed near them, with 10 points on top for taking the opponent's home objective outright. His Aspect Toolbox answers all 3 the same way. Fire Dragons and Warp Spiders clearing whatever guards an objective, then putting a body on it to run the action. Watts, on the same 2 detachments, declared Reconnaissance. Twice, into Take and Hold opponents, it was Reconnaissance Sweep. Score for spreading units across different table quarters away from the middle, plus points for enemy units killed. Into a priority assets opponent, it was Search and Scour. Score for holding central objectives and for killing enemy units caught in terrain. And in the mirror against another reconnaissance list, it was Gather Intel. Score for holding central objectives and for an intel extraction action, with a bonus for a marker left near the opponent's home objective. That's a different scoring shape from Schuchman's, built around spreading out and trading rather than sitting on objectives, on a list leaning on the Avatar and 3 Wraith Lords. All 6 missions share 1 line. Control at least 1 objective besides your own every round from the 2nd onward, whatever else the mission asks on top. That's a read off the lists and the missions. A like or a subscribe puts this in front of more Aeldari players, and for a channel this size that's close to the whole marketing budget, the faction pages, the detachment numbers, the disposition matrix, and the list checker all sit on Wardrill, free, on iOS, Android, and the web, at wardrill.app. A few numbers worth tracking as more games come in. The weekly win rate is the first, 46.8 a week or so back, 47.1 this week, 45.5 across the edition. If it keeps ticking up once the world team crowd clears out, that's a real move. Aspect Host is the next, well back of the top 3 across the edition at 41, and top of this week at 57 on 5 lists, and more lists will tell us which of those describes the build. The Warp Spider count is the last. The July update made one squad a little cheaper, and a second and third a little more, So the open question is whether lists settle on one big engine or keep stacking them. The people who make all of this possible are on the screen now. My Patreon supporters cover the data tools behind every number in this episode, and the Magos operators among them are named here. Thank you. That's the Aeldari. Below the 50% line across the edition, a shade higher on a World Team week, and one build ran the table at a grand tournament on the Lhykhis and Warp Spider's engine the whole army is built around. The hardest lanes are Necrons, Custodes, and the Thousand Suns, whose Dossier went up Tuesday. I'm Sarv. Take it to a table and see how it goes.